All right, we're going to start with a short writing lesson this morning. Remember when we were talking last week about a personal narrative? Who's a personal narrative about? Amy? Ourselves, right? Yeah, something that's actually happened to us. All right, so how do personal narrative writers come up with their story ideas? We just kind of talked about it. Where do their story ideas come from, Lucas? Themselves, things that have happened to them, maybe funny things that happened to them, or kind of scary things, or could be something sad that happened to them.
Or for like another thing, for like what they can get the story from, they can get it from like the past.
Yeah. Could be something that happened yesterday. Could have been something that happened 5 years ago, if you remember back that far. That's okay. That's okay. All right, so have you ever had, I know I definitely have, but have you ever had a hard time deciding what you were going to write about? Like when it came time for writing in school and you had to write a story about something?
Yeah.
And you sit there and you're like, oh man, I don't know what to write about. I don't have any ideas. Have you ever felt that way before?
Yeah.
Where some days it's harder to come up with those thoughts than other days? I can totally relate. And so what we're going to do today is talk about a good strategy for coming up with ideas for personal narratives. Now, did we already jot down a few from the other day?
Yeah.
Last week, I think we did. I had you come up with at least 3 different ideas. So if we have good strategies for coming up with our story topics, the things that we're going to write about, then we don't waste very much time, and then we can actually get into what we need to be writing. So lesson 4 for writing is about generating a story idea. You kicking me? All right, remember with the last lesson how I read an example story, an example personal narrative about the girl whose mom woke her up in the middle of the night. The moon was out, the stars were out, and what did they see?
Yep.
Like out their big window. What was it that they saw, Connor?
Elk.
A whole herd of elk, right? And her mom thought that that was so neat that she went in and woke her up to see it, even though it was the middle of the night. But was that something that girl always remembered then? Was that time looking over the back of the couch through the window at all of those elk? So here's another example. The title of this personal narrative is called Blackberry Picking with Grammy. Grammy, I have been waiting all morning for this, I told her with excitement as she rocked in her rocking chair on the front porch while waiting for me. Well, sweetie pie, it sounds like you're ready to go, she replied, giving me a big warm hug. Grammy bent over and grabbed the handle of the little red wagon that sat in her front yard. The wagon was filled with all kinds of items that would make our day of picking blackberries successful. She packed 2 thermoses of water and a bottle of sunscreen because berry picking can get awfully tiring in the sun after a picking. Oh, I just skipped a line. In the sun after a while. She also packed mixed nuts, sliced apples, and crackers for our mid-picking snack. Last, she packed 2 medium-sized buckets for us to put our berries in as we plucked them from the bushes. We made our way down the hill and through the tall green grass behind Grammy's house. We continued walking until we stopped at the edge of the woods. There they were, the same big blackberry bushes we picked berries from the last few years together. Suddenly, the feeling of happiness washed over me as I thought about picking berries with Grammy in the past. Do you remember the rules, darling? Grammy asked me as we began. I sure do. 1 berry for me and 10 for the pot, I giggled. That's right, smart girl, Grammy said as she winked at me and patted me lightly on the head. Grammy grabbed a bright green branch and pulled it close to us. Over the years, I've gotten better at carefully picking the berries without getting stuck by too many thorns. Grammy and I were both sure to wear long sleeves and pants to avoid the bugs and scratching our arms. We each picked our first berry and held them out toward each other, touching them together gently. Cheers, we said at the same time, and popped the blackberries in our mouths. This was a tradition that we had done before to mark the picking of our first berries. It was sweet and juicy as I bit down, the berry melting in my mouth. I could hardly wait until Grammy and I picked enough to make our famous blackberry cobbler. I knew we'd be picking until we grew tired, but I didn't mind because this was by far my favorite thing to do with Grammy. All right, so in that story that I had just read, the author wrote about a person that was special to her. Who was special to her?
Her Grammy.
Her Grammy. Do you think, I already said her, I'm assuming that the author is a girl. Could it be a boy? Probably so, okay? So she didn't just write a biography about herself. It was about her and her Grammy. So personal narratives are not biographies because biographies tell about one single person, just that person. Maybe what they look like, maybe where they live, maybe what kinds of things they do or what they like. Okay, so personal narratives are an actual story. So it's going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. She wrote about what she liked to do with her Grammy. What does she really like doing with her Grammy? Like, it's become a tradition that they do it every year. What is it, Raylyn? Picking blackberries with her Grammy. Okay, she wrote about what she did with that person. Did she write about the whole day with her Grammy? No, she just wrote about picking blackberries, didn't she? She kept it pretty specific about that. Okay, the author was the main character. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. All right, and she's the one telling the story. And we know that personal narratives are stories that we write about ourselves, right? So one way that authors generate story ideas is to brainstorm memories, just like her memory of picking blackberries with her Grammy. Brainstorm memories that you have. Maybe it's with a person that is special to you. All right, so I probably should write on here. I don't know, will Noah be able to see this? Hold on a second, Noah. All right, so, whoops, I just sat on a paper, I think. What we're gonna do is I'm just going to kind of model ways that I might think of a topic for my personal narrative. So I'm gonna think of my grandma. Just because she was writing about her grandma, I thought I have some pretty good stories with my grandma. So I'm gonna make a story web. Have you seen these before?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I called my grandma, not just grandma, I called her Grandma Airplane when I was little, because she lived in California and we lived in Nebraska, and she'd always fly from California to Scottsbluff to the airport, and I thought that that was her airplane, and so I called her Grandma Airplane. And it would bother me when that airplane would like start filling up with other people that were on the next flight, and I'd be like, Grandma, they're taking your airplane. I couldn't figure it out. Was it really her airplane?
No.
No. But I thought it was hers. All right, so my Grandma Airplane. Different things that I recall with my grandma. I can remember going to the beach with her, like going to the ocean, because she lived not too far from the ocean itself in California. I can remember making milkshakes with her. It was kind of the special treat that we would have together. I remember a time where we went to have lunch on like this big, huge boat dock, this big fancy restaurant. I think it was called the Yacht Club restaurant. I don't even remember for sure. I'm thinking that's what it was.
I think
But
I know.
so it was like lunch out on kind of a pier.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've been there too.
Have ya? Something similar to that probably.
Yeah, is it like a hexagon where the restaurant's sitting with the big thing out? That's what ours was like.
It was kind of like that. They're probably similar to each other though. Another, bless you, another time I remember, you know, being from Morrill as a kid, did we have like those great big ginormous malls that they have in the big cities? No. So I remember the first time that it was just my grandma and she took me shopping at this huge mall. And I remember getting to pick out two things. She let me pick out two things of whatever I wanted. And I remember thinking how neat that was that I was getting to do this with my grandma, because normally I'd always have to go shopping with my mom. And so it was kind of a special treat to go shopping with grandma at that huge mall. All right, so do I have lots of memories of my Grandma Airplane? Yes. I could keep coming up with more ideas that involve my grandma. But I want you to stop and think, is there a special person in your life that you've done some pretty neat things with? Is there somebody in your life that you have a tradition with? Just like the girl that I read the story about, she and her Grammy would every year go pick blackberries. Do you have someone special that you do things with? Can you think of a special person? Maybe it's a brother, maybe it's a sister, maybe it's a cousin, or an aunt, or an uncle, or your mom, or your dad, or your grandma, or your grandpa. Can you think of anybody that's special that you've done?
Does it have to be like a tradition?
No, it doesn't have to be a tradition. Maybe it's a time when it was like your whole family together and you did something really, really fun, or something crazy happened, or I don't know. It's your ideas. Okay, but what we're going to do next time, because it's almost time to go to library, is we're going to complete this paper that's going to go in your resources part of your writing notebook. Does this look kind of familiar?
Yeah, it's like a.
Does this look familiar? Not yet, because we haven't talked about this yet. But we're going to work on this part. Now, are you going to have to write kind of small on here? Yes. Okay. All right, so Noah will get this paper to you, not that one. We'll get the similar paper to you like this, and if we can fit some writing in later, we'll work on that then. If not, we'll have more time tomorrow morning to be able to work on it. All right, would you go ahead and stop the video? Noah, we'll see you during reading time.
Crystal, so can you use the bathroom?
Thank you for waiting.